And here we are in part 2 of our Stewart Copeland Info Gear Special Extravaganza. So, what we have here, remember, this is from a site called Infinite Design, Infinite Destiny, where this person had collated all these sort of very relevant, important, information-packed, nutrient-dense Stewart Copeland informational thingies, which I'm simply just exposing everybody to if they haven't seen it. Remember, you can go find this yourself. Infinite Density, 2 words but one together. So Infinite Density is a glob.net. Copeland, you'll find this, all this stuff I'm talking about. So I left off just before we got to Jeff's sites, specifically. There's a lot of this here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up with where I left off, the Jeff site stuff. So I'm going to go down. I'm pretty sure we were... But I didn't realize how much just information there is here. Just crazy town. So again, Jeff cites, you'll notice that Copeland kept talking about always 9-ply this, 9-ply that, which is the Imperial Stars were 9-ply. And again, Copeland, wonderful Tama endorsee. And he endorses Peisty. You see how he talks about the stuff? I mean, that he loves it. He always talks about it in these interviews. Like every one of these. Remember, there's like 6 or 7 interviews here from like 80, 81, 82, 83, and 84. He mentions Colado Regal tip sticks a few times too. He's just a great endorser. Get Copeland if you have something you want endorsed, because he'll talk about it all the time. Okay. So, let me pick that little bear up that fell out of my pant leg. Okay. So, here we go. Okay. So, what I say, sites. Okay. So, Jeff cites on Stewart's equipment. Okay. Remember I said in the other video, part 1, why did Stewart's drums sound so good at the forum? Probably the LA forum. I think there's other forums. And then sites started going in to say, well, as Copeland said earlier, well, Stewart tunes his drums different than drummers of the old days because, drummers in the old days tuned the drums so low you really couldn't hear them rumble around, blah, blah, blah. Here we say, the sound sort of dropped off. It was just rumbling around. Now, Stewart is into a very tight sound. He also plays a lot of the rim on every drum he hits, including the snare. Okay. And then he says, most rock drummers play rim shots all the time, but when Stewart plays his tom-toms, he's hitting the rims as well, as we see when we look at that lovely footage of Yore when Copeland's on the Rampage. All right, so here we go. Now, I think it's Rob, RF, whoever it was for Modern Drummer. Would you detail Stewart's setup for me? Now remember, this is October 82. So this is Ghost in the Machine touring era, okay? October 82 is like probably right at the height, almost probably at the tail end of the Ghost in the Machine touring. Because they started recording Synchronicity in, I think, December of 82. So, would you detail Stewart's setup for me? Okay, they're all Tama, the Imperial Star Tama, which is a thicker drum. This is where I left off, right? I'm sorry. With 9-ply shells as opposed to 6, and then I mentioned the other video that 6-ply, I think, were the Superstars, which Copeland did play. Remember, he had briefly had a Superstar kit that was a mahogany finish. What do they call it? They used to call it Super Mahogany, but before it was Super Mahogany, they called it something else. Same setup, 10, 12, 13, 14. I'm sorry, 10, 12, 13, 16. You can see him when he's recording at Wisseloord in Holland. When the recording's in Janamandata, he recorded with those. Remember that clip that you see in Does Everybody Stare? Does Everyone Stare? Where Copeland says, everybody, it's my 30th birthday or my 25th birthday, whatever. And he goes up to the drums and it says like, happy birthday, Stuart. There's like flowers and stuff all over his drums. He goes up with the suit. That actually isn't... 81. That is actually his 29. That's the birthday before. I think Copeland probably just got it mixed up or maybe took a little bit of a artistic license. That footage is actually from Holland. Those are his Superstar setup, where he knocks the stuff out of the way, the flowers. And you can see the Superstars. Anyway, in the subsequent tour in 1980, what Copeland did, as I mentioned in the other video, he took a Tama Imperial Star bass drum head, probably from his other kit, cut out Imperial Star and then taped that over on the front of the Superstar. I don't know why he just didn't switch the head. But you can clearly see in some of these pictures his Tama and then Imperial Star sort of in a different sort of dirtier drum head sort of taped in crudely over his Superstar kit. Which I think he only then... Anyway, they talk about how he goes back to the Imperial Stars because they take the beating better, right? It's just what he says. whether they really do or not. I do really love those original Superstars and the original Imperial Stars. Those were great drums, and you can still find them. Back to it. Okay. The fact that he does go for a percussive type sound also presents a problem that he does want to get a pitch to it. So if by attacking a drum really aggressively, if the drum can't take the pressure, it will sound very tinny. He wants it to be percussive, but he also wants a nice tone. Okay. All the tom-toms have Remo heads on them, and the bottom heads are ambassadors. I might have mentioned this in the other video. I think I did. Okay, remember, I did, because I said how often you change the heads. Site said the snare drum is changed pretty frequently. And then I started to mention that we all know, when you see pictures of Copeland playing, there was a long stretch of time Copeland put in sort of maybe a punk rock, maybe affectation, or maybe he was just really under a lot of pressure in the band. I'm sure it was pressure being in that band with three people, man, with Sting and Andy Summers. You know, all that pressure and the artistic stuff made a great product, right? But I'm sure it was stressful. Remember, he had the F word, and then off, U. So F word was on the 10. Off was on the 12. U was on the 13. And the 16 had the C word. And he also had like a pound, you know, like the British pound symbol. So when he's probably playing, he's getting all stressed out. He's probably remember like, it's okay if I get through the show. I know it's killing me, but at least I'm going to get, 15,000 US after the show, right? Anyway, the point there being that those heads had been on there for a long time. Like you see pictures, all through 81 and 82 where those heads, they're still there. He uses those toms. So he's not changing the heads too often if those tom heads have been on there that long, which is kind of cool. Again, that goes back to Bonham, too. Especially with Bonham's snare drum sound. We're going to make a Bonham. George and I are going to make another, well, as far as George and Terry are concerned, make a first Bonham snare tuning video. But what's so important to that is you need a head that's played in a little. It has to be mature without being stretched out. But anyway, so here, back to Copeland. Okay, so the snare drum is changed pretty frequently, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I have to rotate the bass drum head before every show to change the beating spot so I don't have to change a bass drum head in the middle of the show. You know what I mean? So if the bass drum, it keeps, where you might have a mole patch or something, he just turns it, kind of like tire rotation, so that impact mark gets moved over and he's hitting a fresh one. So after a while, you might have a ring, right? An indentation. Anyway, so we go for a basic attack effect on the kick drum. As far as sizes, the bass drum is 14 by 22, the snare drum is 5 by 14, and the toms are 8 by 10, 8 by 12, 9 by 13. The floor tom is 16 by 16, and he's using two supplementary floor rack toms on his left, which are 8 by 12 and 9 by 13. He uses a set of 4 tom octobans, and that's it as far as drums. It's interesting about the 8 by 12, and you do see clips later. If you see like that Atlanta stuff where they're playing at the Omni, and later pictures from like 83 especially, you do see two tom-toms off to his left here. And maybe he's using those. Remember how he said he used a dead rototom to trigger like sounds? Maybe he was using those for sounds too. I don't know. Okay, Cymbals. So the author here in this 1982 October, Cymbals. Remember, I gave you the 1984 stuff before in the other video that mentioned a Formula 602 13-inch medium hats and a 22, what was it? Well, here, let me go into the Cymbals now here in October 82, and we'll go back to the 84 thing I mentioned in the other video. Cymbals. We're now using all Peisty, a new kind called the Rude. In October 82, they were probably out for almost 2 years. But then again, too, I mean, my kids, if they're in high school, I might inadvertently say, oh, yeah, they're in 6th grade. Oh, I mean, they're in high school. Time goes by fast. We're now using all Peisty, a new kind called the Rude. We have a 24-inch ride, which I mentioned before. A lot of us people know he used a 24-inch ride crash Rude, okay? 2 18-inch crash rides and 2 16-inch crash rides. Oh, I think I mentioned that in the video yesterday. This is where I got that information. An 8-inch ice bell. Somebody made an ice bell. It was a real heavy, I think it was bronze, like ting, which is a special little pitch cymbal, and Peisty 2002 hi-hats, which are 13. So he does mention 2002 hi-hats here, now he doesn't say whether they're medium or heavy. I did notice, and I will say that when I put that video up the other day about the Gateshead stuff where they're doing Bring on the Night, which is out of hand, not just Copeland, but the police in general, kicking ass left and right. That's 82, okay? So that's Gateshead. You can tell that the hi-hats he's playing there. Go back and listen to my, I think my Why Stewart Copeland's So Great and I go through and I play the Gateshead recording of them playing that live, you can really hear when Copeland's playing the hi-hats and the, like, tick, 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 they really sound B80, okay, B8 alloy, and here it's confirmed. And also, too, I think I said in those pictures where you saw him in 82 that show the zills and splashes that the hi-hats do look 2002 as well. Anyway, so in a Paiste 2002 hi-hats, which are 13, he doesn't say whether they're medium or heavy. And then he says, and we're using something called an ictus, which is another ice bell, which is sort of metallic bell-sounding cymbal, and it is also 8-inch. He also uses 8-inch and 10-inch splash cymbals and also a Chinese swish cymbal. You can hear the China. It's neat when you, by the time you get to Synchronicity, like in Synchronicity, the song, 1,000 miles away in the bottom of a Icelandic lock. You know what I mean? I don't want to get ripped up by police people for saying that. You can hear the China there. He used the China a lot on a Synchronicity album. Also, too, the ictus and the ice bell, when you listen to like Murder by Numbers, I don't think that's him tapping the bell of a cymbal. That's actually him hitting either the ictus or the ice bell. You know, at the beginning of Murder by Numbers? You know what I mean? And then, wrapped around your finger, you can hear him hit him a couple times there, too. Okay, Stuart mentioned to me that you usually turn him on to the gadgets, and he'll either veto them or incorporate them into his setup. And so, Sight starts talking about echoes and the Roland Space Echo, and which is kind of neat. And you can go, again, I encourage everybody to find this website, okay? www.infinite-density. So remember, infinite and density, but together, .net, Copeland. You'll find it in Google. It'll come up, and it's all the stuff I'm talking about. This is so helpful to the diehard Copeland-ite, okay? But I want to go back to, so see how he just said there in 82, he said two 16 and two 18-inch Rude crash ride models, a 24-inch ride crash, a China in the various splash array. Well, as we go back to, remember what he said in 1984 in an interview, and I don't know if this is Sight saying it because it isn't an interview back and forth. The original Cymbal, 1984 Cymbal info I gave in the other video, it's written like an article. There's no interviewer answer. So I don't know if it's Sight's answering or Copeland himself. But remember what, I forget how freaking long this is. You know what I mean? Doesn't seem like a lot when I'm up on the desktop. And then I get down here on this little pad thing and it just takes decades. All right, so, who decayed? Woo! Okay. All right, we're getting there. Except if you rat bastardo. All right, so we're in 1980, 1982. I hope everybody's doing well today on this Sunday. Got a lot of snow here in Chicago, a lot of snow on the ground. Apparently a thunderstorm or two might roll through tomorrow the next day, which means water, which means that you don't want the drums to be in jeopardy. Gosh darn it. Okay. So I'm getting back to tick-tock, tick-tock, time goes by, tick-tock, tick-tock, time, to the, what he mentioned in 1984. Oh, here it is. I'm sorry. All right. So Stewart Copeland's equipment. This is, again, what I mentioned yesterday, the May 1984 Downbeat article. So this is written, again, just like prose. It doesn't really say who this author's asking, whether it's Sights or Copeland, but it just says, again, Stewart Copeland's basic gear is tom and Paiste. Remember I said, Copeland then said, this author says his Midnight Blue Tom Imperial Star setup includes a 5-inch snare, 22-inch bass drum, 10, 12, and 13-inch rack toms. I mentioned this yesterday, but I want to get to the cymbals. Remember where he said by May 1984, the cymbals he was using, at least on stage, it's Formula 602 13